left turn signal coming into the city through the garage. I mean, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's
a county garage.
That's
No, no, but seriously.
Trust me, right now that they have 35 exit ramps where you can't go straight to the two largest employers to the left, and everybody's going and doing a U-turn.
Oh, no.
It's been that way for months. There's nobody working on that little section, and they just making this really hard hairpin turn, and nobody cares.
And that's dangerous.
It's somebody
Coming off of 35 where we've got
Yeah.
4 lanes, yes,
And speed.
yeah.
Somebody's gonna get hurt out here.
I'll fix everything. Just have to get elected first.
First step, huh?
First step.
Ooh, where's the top sheet? Oh, there it is. May I have a motion to certify the candidates of petitions that appear valid?
So moved.
I'll second.
Been properly moved and second to certify candidate petitions that appear valid. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. At this particular time, we would like to have Director Kelly speak about the voting equipment allocation.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Director Steve Horstman.
As the board's aware, in the past with the TSX, the touchscreen voting system, we were required to deploy 1 to 175. With this new paper-based system, we're going to be deploying 4 marking devices along with 2 scanners at every location. We're waiting for specific clarification from the Secretary of State if we even need to do a machine allocation like we had in the past, but we're going to go ahead and ask the board to approve that deployment for the first election upon further clarification in the future.
Are there any questions?
I have none.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Been properly moved and second to support the voting equipment allocation for the November 5th, 2019 general election. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. Next, we will have a hearing on the pending petition for David Young for the City of Trotwood Council regarding residency requirements as protested by Rhonda Finley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I have, I was told to bring some information.
Excuse me.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
do raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that what you'll say here today will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
So I was asked to bring verification to prove my residency status in Trotwood for a year prior to the election coming up.
Mr. Young, would you raise your microphone a little bit so we can?
So I have here are the original copies. Am I okay? There's a signed affidavit from my previous landlord and then a current lease agreement with my current landlord to show that I've been in Trotwood since September of 2018.
Chairman, this is a public meeting and a public hearing, correct?
Yes, it is.
I would like an opportunity to speak before you make a decision.
Well, we haven't reached that point yet, but
I understand.
do we have?
If I could make a comment, according to the attorney,
What's the question? If you're gonna make a comment, what's
the question is whether or not Mr. Young has established residency in the city of Trotwood
Right.
1 year prior to the date of taking office, which was January 2nd, 2020, and according to the affidavit and the lease agreement that he's presented to the board, that date has to be supplied. And I'd like to pass it to council as well. Those affidavits that prove that he was living in the city per those documents that the city attorney for Trotwood recommended that Mr. Young show to this board to prove his residency requirement.
He's shown a current lease and he's shown a prior affidavit from his prior land person.
I think the question was also whether or not the charter, they have two requirements. One, to be an elector, a registered elector, which he did meet, and the other was that by the time he is sworn in, that he had qualified from the residency standpoint. Is that clear?
Mr. Barrington, do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
We had received a letter from City Council, the attorney for the council, Mr. McHugh, and he opined that one of the requirements on the City Council requirement would not apply to Mr. Young, and that has to do with the seat that he is seeking, I believe, whether or not he was a resident of the district. So I believe that according to Mr. McHugh, and we will defer to his interpretation of Trotwood City Charter, Mr. Young had indicated the two requirements for the board to determine are whether or not he's a qualified elector under state law and whether or not he's resided simply within any part of Trotwood for a year prior to him taking his seat.
As it's an at-large position.
As I understand it, yes, according to Mr. McHugh, the residency within an individual district is not a requirement for the seat he is seeking.
There is, are there any other questions or to Mr. Young from the board?
No, I'm clear.
Okay. May may we have a motion?
Did you want to allow Mr. Esrati to address the board? He is not giving testimony.
Actually, I am. On the record, please.
Swear?
That's right, right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that what you say today will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
I do. David Esrati, 113 Bonner Street. On issues of residency, I believe this board no longer has any purview whatsoever, based on the fact that I presented to you back in April of 2016 that Adil Bagirov, who was serving on the Dayton Board of Education, no longer lived within the district. That was ignored. It was not only ignored by you, the prosecutor's office, the school board, the state AG, the Secretary of State, the Ethics Commission, and the Ohio Elections Commission. So, I mean, everybody along the chain dropped the ball. On election day, he had changed his registration to not live within the district. I notified, again, everybody on the chain.
Mr.
Nobody
Excuse
took
me.
an action. Nobody
Excuse-
took an action to remove him from office on a basis of residency. Therefore, you have absolutely not served in your capacity as a Board of Elections to enforce residency rules. So you trying to do this now is sort of a farce, because I had to threaten a mandamus action in order to get him to resign 2 days after he had changed his voter registration. So either we have a residency rule or we don't, and it has to be enforced equally to everybody, or we don't. But you should let the voters decide on this, because you don't have any standing on this issue.
Thank you.
The point of clarification here is that under the home rule statutes, we go by the charter. And when we made reference to the city attorney for Trotwood for clarification, we wanted to verify by law and under their home rule that we were abiding by what their rules and regulations were. The previous case you're citing is obviously with the city of Dayton and the rules associated with the school board. But that has no relevance to this particular case. That's all.
Keep believing what you believe.
Thank you. May we have, may I have a motion?
I move we approve the candidacy of David Young for Waterloo.
I'll second.
Been properly moved and second to approve the candidacy of David Young for the city of Trotwood Council with information being provided that satisfies his residency requirement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. Next, we will have the hearing on the candidacy for Craig Anderson for Harrison Township trustee regarding his current address. Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
You will get sworn in and you may state your case.
Good morning. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that what you'll say here today will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury? Yes. Thank you.
All right, good morning, board members, directors, and prosecutors. I was aware, August the 7th, when I turned in my, well, a week after August 7th, upon turning in my petition, that my opponent had accused me of election fraud, and that the allegation was is that I did not live at the 3629 address where I pulled my original petition. I pulled that petition December the 27th, 2018, and I moved to 4334 Riverside Drive. 5 months later, after I moved into 4334 Riverside Drive, my house my apartment was destroyed by the tornado. I contact a local trustee via text and telephone to ask, was I still able to run for that current office? He said yes. He said, if you plan on securing a home before the election is up. I talked to a few people who in the political arena told me that I have to notify the Board of Election as soon as possible. I went down to the Board of Election. They told me that there was some discrepancy with my address. I did not inform the Board of Election that I had moved from 3629 Elderberry Avenue to 4334 Riverside Drive. I immediately updated my residency, re-registered to vote, and the Board of Election informed me to pull another petition and stop circulating the 3629 Elderberry Avenue petition. I pulled the petition from 3605 Evansville Avenue. And I've been circulating that petition only. I turned in 3605 Evansville Avenue on August the 7th, 2019, along with the 3629 Elderberry Avenue. I wasn't aware that I wasn't allowed to turn in that petition as well. There was no statements from the Board of Election themselves. I'm here to gather more information because I was told I was under investigation. The sheriff himself hasn't given me any information as far as the investigation, and I called the Board of Election numerous times to get further information. I was told not to call back, and I was told that a correspondent was going to be sent to my house regarding this hearing. I had to hear about this hearing through the grapevine, so there was no letter sent to me.
Okay.
I have proof that I live in all three addresses, if that's what you're looking for.
No, what my concern was is that it is our policy to have notified you of this hearing, and I'm concerned about you stating that you did not receive it. So that was the little buzz.
Well, the other question is that if someone says from the Board of Elections, don't call back, that's even a bigger.
That's unacceptable.
The director,
And I can address that. That was me. He was calling every day and
Oh, okay.
asking campaign finance questions. And I advised him that he was receiving a letter regarding this hearing and not to call back and harass them about what was going to go
No.
on. That his comments will be heard at the hearing.
no, I was not harassing. Well, I think anytime anybody in the public is under investigation, they will love to know any information regarding that. And if I call the only people who have the answers, and you cannot give me any answers, I was transferred to the campaign finance, and I'm just asking, what am I being investigated for?
And it was my suggestion that you could seek legal counsel. We are not at liberty to provide you
And I totally understand
legal
that.
counsel.
But that was after the fourth time I called. And when I finally got a hold to you, you told me not to call back. And you also mentioned that you were going to send me a correspondence stating when my hearing was going to be, and you never did that.
We did. We sent a certified letter to you. Are you currently residing at 3605 Evansville
Yes,
Avenue?
and I have not
That's where
received
the letter was
that.
sent.
Have not received that.
There was no return card?
I don't have it now. I'll have to check.
Well, we need to verify. But are there any other comments that you would like to make, Mr. Anderson?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barron?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Anderson's issue is slightly different from the issue of Mr. Young, where the board actually had some information that called into question how long he had lived in the city of Trotwood. Mr. Anderson does not have that same facially invalid petition or residency. And so therefore, an acceptance or more to the point of rejection of his candidacy or petition would be governed under 3501-39 of the revised code, in that there had been a protest which had been made naming specific objections in which this board shall accept the petition unless this board at a hearing is able to determine that the petition is invalid or violates some requirements of law. Therefore, as opposed to Mr. Young, Mr. Anderson's petition really should be deemed valid unless there is evidence put forward that would deem it invalid. Revised Code 3503.02 defines residency not necessarily where someone is living at the time, but a person's habitation is fixed into which whenever the person is absent, the person has an intention of returning. If this board were to find that any or all of those residences were valid residences, or more to the point, if there was no evidence put forward that those were not his valid residences, and his petition otherwise satisfied the requirements of the board as far as signatures goes, then the determination of the board is whether or not there is any evidence to invalidate those petitions or that residence.
And again, this being a
Hey,
public
Miss-
hearing, I'd like to speak.
Mr. David?
Mr. Ezrati, Mayor McGlynn, and yes, it's a public hearing and I asked to speak.
Yes, but it doesn't mean you can blurt out.
You don't ask for people to speak.
Excuse me, if, can we please stay on point here, in all due respect to Mr. Anderson? So you're presently at 3605 Evansville?
Yes.
Okay. And staff has checked these signatures?
Yes,
Okay,
He has more than enough.
yeah.
he does, he does.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chairwoman.
Public
Okay,
hearing.
Mr. Young, is there anyone who'd like to make a comment?
Okay. About this issue.
About
please.
this issue? If it's not specific to this case.
It's specific to this issue because
No,
you
no,
are-
to this case.
this case. State of Ohio elects one person to oversee elections. Everything else is managed by the Board of Elections.
That's
at
right,
each
just a reminder,
county
it's still
level.
under oath.
This is under oath, yes.
Just make sure you remember.
Yes. So, Board of Elections is the only agent to supervise issues of being worthy of being on the ballot, like residency or number of signatures, and you're very, very careful about the signatures and checking every address and every signature on these petitions. What I fail to understand is where there is a person assigned to this Board of Elections that investigates residency and does it historically, and if you do have somebody that does that, then you have purview over this, but without any assigned position, and ruling the will of named electors, I find this to be pure hypocrisy. I don't think you have a right to make rulings on where people live or anything else. This is not something that you do because you didn't. In the case of Dr. Begiroff, when it was brought to your attention, even though it was a state position, school board residency is required by the state, not local, and you most certainly had responsibility for that. Thank you.
Mr. Young?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the candidacy of Craig Anderson for candidate for Harrison Township trustee.
I'll second.
Been properly moved and second to accept Craig Anderson's petition for Harrison Township trustee. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and thank you, Mr. Young, for presenting your case. At this time, I would like to have comments from Director Kelly.
Thank you. Couple items. we need to look at our calendar, for the rest of the year. Since the, primary for March has changed, we need to look at our dates, in December. But first, we need to set a meeting in September because there's no board meeting scheduled. I'd like to see if the members are available on September 10th. We have a couple more protest hearings that I need to schedule, and some other items that may need to be discussed before we lock down on the ballot.
What date is that?
September 10th,
That's on a,
Tuesday
that's on a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
at 8:30.
Yes.
What time, I'm sorry?
8:30.
I can move it out.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we good? Board members, are we good for this?
I am.
This week? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
September.
you. And the next date, December 18th is the last day for local questions and issues for the primary, which is now March 17th, to be filed with the boards of elections. Therefore, we need to have a meeting either, soon thereafter. So I was looking at Friday before the holidays or maybe Monday.
December 20th?
Yeah.
December 20th or the latest December, oh, you don't want to do December
Right, right.
23rd. December 20th, board members, take a look.
What's the earlier date, 18th?
No, the 18th is the closing
Closing
date.
date.
So we will try to be ready. I don't think, and I've discussed this with Steve, I don't think we'll have that many last minute filings, but you never know. So I'm just advising you of that, and hopefully we can be prepared to present all of those filings to the board on December 20th at 8:30 a.m.
So go over the December schedule again.
December 18th is the filing deadline.
Okay.
Board meeting December 20th.
Okay.
That's
What time?
8:30?
8:30.
Is that good, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
We'll be ready.
Maybe we'll have a new left turn.
I won't be in office yet, so.
Okay.
Okay, that's, so, now, because we have a board meeting scheduled for December the 10th, is that still a go, or is that being replaced?
We still may need that for recounts and certification of the election, and recounts, that's potential.
We will send the board members soon an updated board meeting schedule for 2019 and copy the prosecutor's office as well, because there have been some substantial changes so that you can review your calendars.
So the primary's been moved to,
March 17th, St. Patty's Day,
oh my goodness.
Oh, my.
which Cuyahoga County greatly opposed, the record.
All right, so as it stands now, just to review. We, are going to have a meeting in September,
September 10th.
September the 10th at 8:30. No meetings in October?
I'll have to get my, let me go,
Oh, 15.
excuse me.
October
October 15th.
Yeah, oh, yeah, October the fifteenth at 8:30.
I'm sorry. October.
November the fourth at 11, or did that change?
No, that stays.
Okay, November the fourth,
And what was October the,
15th at 8:30 a.m.
yeah, I've got all these, that's fine.
okay, we're just doing a review.
Yeah, I'm
Mr.
glad. I'm
Mr.
glad you
Young,
are.
just to
Thank
make
you.
sure
Thank you.
that, then November 25th, 26th, you should already have that.
I do.
Okay. And both are at 8:30. Now we have the meeting December the 10th at 11.
Correct.
And now we're gonna have December the 20th at 8:30.
Okay.
And that should be it for the year.
Well, I may not be in a suit. On the 20.
Christmas PJs?
Santa Claus?
Maybe. you know.
Santa Claus suit?
That's getting awfully close to Christmas for me. Since I travel all the time.
That, Director Kelly, any more comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Director Hirschman,
I have none at this time, thank you.
board members, you have any comments?
I have one. I want to congratulate Sarah and Bill for just completing their certification. They had a nice graduation. We were happy to be there with them. And we now have 2 more Sarah certification members of the staff. So congratulations. I hope you enjoyed those classes.
We did, thank you. I guess I'll speak for Sarah since she can't attend, but thank you very much to the board for your support of the program for the past 2 years. And it's, as some of you know who've done it, it's more than worthwhile the time and energy to take those classes, and of course to meet fellow elections officials from around the country and kind of pick up things that they do that we can bring back here to improve our elections for Montgomery County. So thank you for your support.
Thank you for participating because it still takes away from the family, et cetera. So thank you very much for enjoying those moments because they're very valuable. So,
I would just like to tell the audience and get on record here that this board really does work very hard for candidates and the voters. And there are situations where people rise and make comments and things like that. We welcome them, and that we will always do that. And I want to thank my colleagues and the staff for putting in the time and abiding by what we feel is the right thing to do to get people to run and to get people to the polls. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hunter. Are there any public comments? Thank you. I'd like to thank you for being here oh, did you want to speak, sir?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, your name?
My name is Michael Andrews, and I am attempting to run for a full term on the Trotwood-Madison City School Board. I was appointed last June, and the term is expiring at this.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You have a protest hearing scheduled?
I do.
Mr. Andrews, I called you yesterday.
Yes.
And asked you to come before the board. So if you would just take a moment, please, so I can let the board know what this is about.
Okay.
With your petitions. Just stay up there. Thank you. Be right back.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. during this time, I'd like to welcome our new addition to, or is this temporary?
Temporary.
Oh,
Called up from the bullpen now.
It's just the understudy for Ms. Jagelski. She is indisposed in trial.
You are now Ann?
For today only.
oh.
Depending on how long the trial goes.
Well, there's that as well.
I
You
guess
look
that's
like an
fair.
Ann.
Well,
Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Peterson, well, welcome.
Thank you. Definitely.
We're happy to have you
Appreciate it.
here. Bill.
What's your best? Valuable. Oh, you know, one of those things that storm in Charlotte, so. Airport was shut down. It was shut down. They like it. COVID situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck to you, gentlemen.
Oh, UBS. Oh, gotcha. Right. Yeah, you're suggesting solutions. More universal.
What were the two?
So I guess we're gonna do this one today. He can say it, but that doesn't right.
They do all kinds of things to keep the status quo. If we really have free elections in this country, put them on the ballot, let the voters decide. Where was the last place we were? Were you getting far ago? I only know one city. All right. Where do you go to Shea School? Okay. Where'd you grow up? Okay. All right. So what beat are you on now? So are you a striker anymore? All right. Your name is Bonnie? Last name? conducting a public meeting or are we having private meetings?
Excuse me.
here? Either this is on the record or it's not.
What we're trying to decide is whether we can save some time for the individual.
Then you should be speaking at full voice in public. This is a public meeting of a public body and you have no reason to be in executive session if you are going into executive session stated. There's at least 3 lawyers in this room. Again, this needs to be on the record.
Excuse me.
No, this is a public meeting. If you're conducting public business and you're gonna do it in whispers and quiet, that's not acceptable.
You shot me, it's a public meeting. That's what you-
It is a public meeting. This is the OMA I'm talking about. Have you read it?
I'll stop.
Step off the board then. None of you belong here.
Did I have those, folders there?
Yeah.
Thank you. If you could hand those to the board members, please.
Director Kelly.
Have the board members had a chance to look at any of this? It is our chairperson's request that Mr. Andrews return at our next board meeting. But prior to that, I think that Mr. Barentine had some words that we wanted to discuss with you regarding, but basically, your protest, and you are the petitioner, your petitions were invalidated at our last board meeting because you were short 2 signatures, and 2 of those signatures were printed. And so it is your position that we should accept those printed signatures. Is that correct? You can come on up.
Yes, yes it is.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, I believe the board has set a precedent involving at least one other candidate with a similar issue where there were printed signatures and that candidate had met the deadline, had turned in the requisite number of signatures if those printed signatures were found to be valid. I believe the board had previously extended the opportunity again for another candidate to go and obtain affidavits or statements indicating that that was in fact their signatures that appeared on the petition. Therefore, following the precedent that this board had set, it is our advice that you allow Mr. Andrews the opportunity to obtain those documents to verify those signatures. That would not account for him, or that would not mean he's turning his petitions in late because he did meet the deadline. It would just be verifying the information contained therein.
I would recommend, Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
that right after this meeting, that you meet with Mr. Harshman so that you can be directed on what you actually need to follow up for, to be prepared for. Would would the next meeting be too late?
No.
No.
September 10th.
September 10th?
Yes.
September the 10th. You would have until then, or earlier to turn it in, but September the 10th. So, that's my directive on this, Mr. Andrews.
Okay.
Okay? Well, and I apologize for the inconvenience that today was your hearing and, and not being fully informed.
Okay,
Thank you.
no,
So you meet with Mr. Horstman?
after the meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
is Mr. Harshman.
right, okay, thank you.